Good morning. Welcome to Impact of Executive Function Disorder in Learning, Considerations and Strategies for Face-to-Face and Virtual Teaching. Today's objectives include you being able to identify the interplay between cognition and executive function, the impact of executive function issues in autism, and indicate at least 3 strategies to mitigate executive function issues. Before we get started, I wanted to read a statement I found while researching information for this presentation. I think it's a perfect starting point to today's presentation. Bartaco, in his article about teaching and learning in the time of COVID, states that in this difficult times, it is important to fall back on the pedagogical underpinning of our teaching practices and not to be overwhelmed by the technological challenges of being forced online. How wise is that? I know that a lot of us were forced into the virtual environment, whether we were ready for it or not, whether we were versed in the virtual environment or not, and we had to find our ways. And I thought this was a great starting point because it reminds us that we got this. Whenever we're feeling overwhelmed, we can just go back and remember our pedagogical underpinnings and then make it fit into the virtual setting. For example, for purposes of this presentation, we will be focusing on the 2 important topics related to learning, cognition, and executive function, so that we can tie the principles of cognition and executive function when discussing teaching students with autism, both in the classroom and through the online environment. Cognition, we know, refers to the mental process of acquiring knowledge and understanding through thought, experiences, and the senses. A synonym to cognition is intelligence. So we're going to be focusing on executive function in our discussion because this is the process by which we acquire fluid intelligence. This presentation is based in part by an article written in 2013 by Adele Diamond, which I found to be extremely accurate and illuminating. In this table, Adele Diamond explains all the areas of life which executive function impact. I have highlighted 2 of those areas that I found very relevant to this conversation, namely executive functions are more important for school readiness than our IQ or entry-level reading or math. And the second one says that executive functions predict both math and reading competence throughout the school years. These 2 statements bring out the perspective, the importance, and the need for us to, as teachers, to teach executive function skills to our students with autism and other related issues such as ADHD. Because executive function skills are what is going to bring our students to that point of fluid cognition that Adele Diamond talks about. In this chart, we can see that executive function affects the mental health, the physical health, and the quality of life, the job success rate, the marital harmony, even public safety, and of course, the 2 that I already mentioned, school readiness and school success. So as we can see, these are issues that we must address in our classrooms. Very important, Adele Diamond also in her takeaway points discuss that executive functions are prefrontal cortex and are the first to suffer disproportionately when a person is stressed, sad, lonely, or not physically fit. That sounds just like everybody right about now during this COVID period, right? So it seems especially important that we target the physical fitness, emotional, executive functions needs of our students if we're going to promote and impact their academic achievement. Because executive functions are critical for academic achievement, Diamond assures us that it's extremely important to help young children achieve good executive functioning because executive functions in early life, as we just seen, have been found to predict lifelong achievement, health, wealth, and quality of life. So in other words, if the emotional, social, or physical needs are ignored, those unmet needs will work against good executive functions and thus against academic excellence. So this is something that I found very interesting in Diamond's conclusions, was that her warning that a person may be incorrectly diagnosed with executive function disorder when it was really, what's really wrong is that they're stressed, sad, or lonely, or maybe experiencing lack of sleep or even lack of physical exercise. And that may be the cause for the executive function skills. So we know that our students with autism, many of them suffer from stress, anxiety, loneliness, lack of sleep, and even physical exercise. So that's about a quite chunk of our population of students with autism, right? So we have to keep in mind this as we walk away from this presentation today, because I'm not going to be covering too much on this subject, but I wanted to bring it into the forefront because it's an area that we must include in our teachings if we are going to be impacting our students' executive function skills, okay? Well, let's move on. In this diagram, Adele Diamond discusses the intricacies of fluid intelligence, which she defined as the ability to reason, problem solve, and to see patterns or relations among items. She explains that fluid intelligence includes both inductive and deductive reasoning. And in this diagram, Adele clarifies visually the reasoning and problem-solving subcomponents of executive function, which she asserts are synonymous with fluid intelligence. This is on page 151 of her article. Notice that working memory includes verbal and visual spatial working memories. It requires that the individual be able to demonstrate inhibitory control, right? And then the inhibitory control includes cognitive inhibition. It also includes focus and selective attention and self-control and discipline. We also know that to be able to do this, if you follow the arrows, the working memory, the inhibitory control, and the cognitive flexibility, which includes being able to think outside the box and see something from many different perspectives, quickly switch from one task to the other, or flexibility, switching the course when needed. These three things, these three areas lead to higher executive function skills that Adele calls fluid intelligence, which include reasoning, problem solving, and planning. So when we look at, for example, the boxes like cognitive flexibility, being able to think outside the box and to see something from different perspective, we know that our students with autism do have a hard time because of the theory of mind issues that they may be living with. They have a hard time thinking from the perspective of others, right? So we know that's going to be an area we need to address. Over here in the area of inhibitory control, we can see that part of what it is cognitive inhibition and selective focus. So we're going to be talking a little bit about that because we know that those are characteristic of autism, being in that restricted patterns of thoughts and activities. And so those are issues that we know are going to be affecting our students with autism, right? So what is executive dysfunction? First of all, in thinking about that box, Adele's diagram, we saw in the area of inhibition, it's broken down into basically the self-control area, which is further broken down into behavioral control. So that's being able to control and inhibit those desires to be, for example, participating in self-stimming, or a desire to go touch that, or to look out the window, or to go smell that, or to go check out what's happening outside the window, things like that. So that's a behavioral control. Maybe not scream in the middle of class, or maybe, stay focused, right? So interference control in the area of focus has to do with selective attention. So that's, for example, us being able to, when we are, let's say, in a networking event, and I'm trying to pay attention to one person, or maybe in the cafeteria at school, and there's all this noise happening behind us, and I'm talking to one person, and I'm having to tune off all those sounds behind me and around me just so I can focus on the speaker, right? So that's selective attention. We know our students with autism, many of them have hypersensitivity to sounds, for example, smells, textures, and so on and so forth. So being able to shut down that or inhibit that extraneous input so that we can focus on what the teacher is saying, that's going to be an area of difficulty for them, right? And then there's cognitive inhibition, and that's being able to shut down that idea that's in my head while I'm trying to listen to the speaker. So for example, you're listening to me right now, and how many times have you been thinking, oh, wait a second, did I pay that? Oh, what did I do with that paper? What did I do with that? Did I turn off the stove? Stuff like that. So being able to shut down those ideas that come to our mind. And in the case of our students with autism, we know that very often they have that tendency to perseverate on that, those ideas, those special interest areas that they want to be focusing on instead of focusing on the speaker. Especially since we are talking about teaching and learning, we know that this is an area that we need to address so they can focus on the content that we're trying to teach. Now, working memory, a lot of people have confused short-term memory with working memory. And the difference between the two is working memory refers to not only the storage of the temporary storage of information in an area, but the manipulation of that information. So for example, being able to do a math problem in our head, whereas short-term memory is just the holding without manipulation, the holding of the information in our minds, right? So that's the two different things. So we have to be able to translate, to plan our next move. For example, translate the instructions into an action plan also requires working memory, right? So for example, organize your work or clean up your room. It requires that the student be able to say, okay, I'm supposed to be cleaning my desk, or I'm supposed to be cleaning my room, and what are the steps that I need to take to clean my room or my desk, right? So that's a working memory kind of thing. So working memory also supports inhibitory control. So for example, we have to be able to hold on to our goal of losing weight to delay the impulse to receive the instant gratification we receive when we eat delicious chocolate, ice cream, or cheesecake, right? Or we have to, in the case of our students with autism, they have to be able to remember that, okay, the teacher said that if I complete 5 math problems for my assignment, then I'll be able to watch my favorite videos, or, go into the computer or tablet to play, So they have to be able to hang on to that idea of first I do this and then I do that. So you see how that working memory is important for that executive function skill that we need to be teaching to help our students reach that area of fluid cognition. Inhibitory control also supports working memory. So it goes back and forth, right? So for example, to think creatively, we have to be able to resist focusing on the internal or external distractions to keep our minds focused on what we need to focus on. So for example, if I'm trying to write an essay for my test, I need to be able to ignore the sounds around me that are competing for my attention, like the air conditioner, the lawnmower outside the window, the busy hallways, etc., so that I can stay focused in writing that assignment, right? So working memory then is something that we really need to be addressing in the classroom. And then that leads us to cognitive flexibility, which is being able to adapt quickly to changes. For example, changes in routine and plans. Like, for example, we were planning on going to the beach today, but guess what? It's raining. So we don't get to go to the beach. Or we were planning to go, it's time for playground in our schedule, but guess what? Today's raining, pouring. We have to do indoor PE because we can't go to the playground. So being able to adapt to those changes without, losing control and getting upset to the point that that may lead to a meltdown in the case of our students with autism, right? Also, cognitive flexibility means being able to look at things again from a different perspective or from the perspective of others. And I've already mentioned the fact that many of our students and individuals with autism do have an issue with theory of mind. So being able to understand that what's important to me, it's not important. It may not be important to you. So the way I look at things may not be the way you look at things. Okay. And then finally, cognitive flexibility also means thinking outside the box, being able to say, okay, how else can I manipulate that? Now, in terms of us as teachers, we also have to look at ourselves in all of these areas of executive function, but specifically in the area of cognitive flexibility. I like to say we demonstrate how we need to adapt quickly to changes when we as teachers realize that the way we plan to present the lesson, the way we thought, yes, I got it, I'll do this and everybody's going to get it. And all of a sudden we have to look at things from a different perspective because we realize, oh, well, that flopped. So-and-so didn't get it, or all of them didn't get it. Maybe one of them didn't get it. So how could I deliver this and thinking outside the box? How could I deliver this message, this lesson from the perspective of my students and rearrange the whole lesson to fit their needs, not what I thought, because that's my own theory of mind, but how they are learning. So those are things to keep in mind that I wanted to discuss as we move forward. And again, from this three, Adele Diamond tells us that these three areas of executive function is what leads us to the higher executive function of fluid intelligence, which include reasoning, problem solving, and planning. Okay, so this is why it's important to remember that executive functions are trainable and can be improved with, for example, switching tasks, repeated practice, increasing the demand that we put on our students, or increasing those high expectations that we're delivering, but making sure that we don't put so much pressure on them that we overwhelm them. So we got to scaffold that in a way that, yes, we are putting high expectation of them. Yes, we are challenging them, but also within, under those limits of pain, under those limits of stressfulness. Okay, so working under that, but always working to push them forward. Okay, so let's move on to the next slide. So now we're going to listen on how someone else might explain executive function. Let's watch this video.
So you just basically talked about a ton of executive functions. Yeah. So you talked about being focused, that's attention. There's lots of skills involved with executive functioning. All of them have to do with kind of organizing oneself, like things that we do to keep ourselves on track, things that we do to help ourselves achieve a goal that we have in mind. And we do these things, we keep ourselves attending to the right things, focusing, being able to do things for longer periods before we get bored with it or we can't handle it anymore. If there's distractions, then we have learned to ignore them. That's inhibition. Or if there's certain behaviors that we kind of feel like we have to engage in, we're able to inhibit and not do it, and we can wait until it's appropriate. You talked about self-monitoring and self-management. That would be simply, you know, if you have a behavior you know that you do and you don't want to be doing it, or there's a goal that you should do it less or something, you might monitor yourself doing that.
Yeah.
But you hit the nail on the head. The things you didn't mention was memory. A lot of times, in order to be successful, you have to actually be able to remember things. This is very interesting to me. Sometimes teachers will give instructions to children. So they'll stand in front of the class, they have an assignment, and they are explaining to the kids in the classroom, here's your assignment and here's what you need to do. Then she says, okay, everybody do it.
Right.
And then the child on the spectrum, while they understood the instructions, they're completely capable of actually doing the assignment. It's not that they don't have the skills to do whatever it is. They literally just sit there and end up not doing something, and that gets misinterpreted sometimes as non-compliance.
Right.
I've noticed that a lot with executive functioning skills, is that sometimes people actually refer to it as the child's being non-compliant. In reality, it could be literally that they can't remember.
Yeah.
So they have a hard time with that kind of stuff.
Right.
So they have to be able to remember and recall information. And it's a difficult area of things that you have to kind of like put together and intermix. But sometimes I think, more traditionally speaking, people will think, oh, this child's ready for inclusion because she knows her colors, letters, can read, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like they look more on the skill level and they go, well, she's right on target with her grade level for skills, so
Yeah.
she should be included. But what they forget about is that in order to function in a classroom environment where there's lots of other kids and only maybe one teacher and an aide or two, you're in a completely different world. You have to be able to really be on top of your game.
And she brought a very, very important point. I like how she said what we forget about. That forgetting about, like she said, we're looking at the skill level and we're looking at the child. Oh, the child is on point for their grade level, and let's get them into the regular classroom. And we forget to set up those supports that the child might need in the classroom, in the regular education classroom. We forget to put those supports because we're not thinking about the executive function issues that the student may have been exhibiting from the beginning, but because our own special education classrooms are set up to support them, we are not remembering actively that we are setting up support for executive function issues. And that may have been one of the reasons why the student was being successful in the smaller classroom setting. Okay, so I just wanted to make sure I point that out so that we can remember to keep that in mind next time. Now we're going to move on one more time to another video so that we can see now executive dysfunction explained from the perspective of an individual living with executive function dysfunction.
Executive functioning actually affects a person's ability to self-monitor. So it can be hard for a person with executive dysfunction to even figure out what is going wrong. People with executive dysfunction, that is that their executive functioning is impaired or atypical in some way, will also have trouble with open-ended questions and open-ended tasks and being told to do something where they're not sure how to do it, or they haven't been given enough instruction or enough thorough instruction. So you're likely to get the best results when communicating or asking something of a person with executive dysfunction. If you're very specific in what you want, you give lots of detail, and if possible, you provide step-by-step instruction. Telling us to just clean the kitchen, for example, may result in a person with executive dysfunction wandering into the kitchen and being overwhelmed by all of the steps that they are unable to break down on their own, or that's very difficult for them to. And so you get stuck in the executive dysfunction spiral of kind of feeling of frustration and sometimes even panic because you know what you want to do, but you are unable to get your brain to cooperate and organize itself, pull itself together long enough to actually do the thing.
So again, and right now I'm noticing that it was very distracting because my audio is kind of choppy. So a lot of us were being asked to just ignore that little static sound behind her words, right? So she brings up a great point. We just very often, and like the other speaker was saying, the other video that we saw, she brings up the point that we very often say, okay, clean up the kitchen, clean up your desk, clean up your book bag. But we forget that we need to support individuals or students with autism and ADHD, which also involves executive function issues, in a way that gives them visual supports. It gives them very clear ways of enlisting and how it is that they can complete the activity. Because it's like she said, it's not that they don't want to do it. It's not that they're being lazy. It's not that they're ignoring the request. They just can't organize that information all at once. And because it does involve that short-term memory, that, you know, that working memory. So first they have to remember, okay, I have to do this, but then they have to go beyond the short-term memory and start manipulating the order of things. So that becomes the working memory, right? So, okay, they asked me to clean the room. What are the steps that I need to take? Okay, first I do this, second I do that. So enlisting the order. So let's help support them. So what can we do as teachers to help our students with executive dysfunction? Before we get started, I wanted to make sure that we reviewed some of the the characteristics of ASD, because it reminds us of what our students are dealing with and why they're having issues with executive dysfunction, executive function issues. So today, specifically, we are speaking about ASD. So let's review a little bit those characteristics. First of all, we know that they have a tendency to have an intense focus and interest area. So we know they're going to be in their head thinking about that or concerned about it all the time. So again, that's that inhibition. We need them to get beyond that, those thoughts, a cognitive inhibition, to stay focused in the moment. The sensitivities are going to impact their attention skills, right? Because they're going to be, if they're hypersensitive to sound, they might be hearing that air conditioner or that static and the sound that we were listening to. They might be just focusing on that rather than the words that being spoken. Or maybe there's someone cutting the grass or has a blower outside the window. So getting beyond those things, or maybe they're concerned about the sticker in their shirt. So or the feeling of the chair, or maybe the smells in the room. So they're, instead of shutting down those senses so they can stay focused and pay attention to the lesson, they're going to be concerned about this, unable to inhibit that information. So they also have a tendency to be concerned about routine and repetition, right? So if there's a break in the routine, for example, at 10 o'clock, we're scheduled to go to the playground, but it's raining, or there's today it's too cold, so we can't go. Now they're going to start perseverating on that. So how do they stay focused in the classroom? So we have to have things in place to make sure that we are anticipating, what do we do when things get out of routine? What can I teach my students so they are prepared to handle those changes in routine? So how can I support them in preparation for that? Communication difficulties. So we know that language is going to be an issue with them. Sometimes they're receptive is greater than they're expressive. So sometimes they want to tell us something. They want to tell us what they're thinking about or what is in their mind, but they cannot be able to get that information out. So sometimes understanding also what we are trying to tell them and keeping it in that working memory, the instructions that we're having to have, that we want them to follow. Sometimes we need to support them visually because they might not be understanding the instructions of what it is. And then they have to hold it in their working memory, but if they're not understanding it, how they're going to hold it in their working memory, right? And then the social impediments also might be related to the fact of waiting their turn, that inhibition, those behaviors, and self-control, okay? I wanted to remind everyone that also IEP adaptations can also give us an idea of how we are going to be working, and there's resources in online. I have included some at the end of this presentation. For example, understood.org is a great place to go to. And so I wanted to start out saying there's ways that we can adapt some of these considerations that we're going to be talking about, how we can support our students by looking for information and resources on the internet. And also remind you to not let that virtual environment throw us off, right? If we could do it in the brick and mortar, we can do it online, okay? So we talked about the jobs. So this is the understood document that, for example, the accommodation on the IEP might say that we have to use audio recordings instead of reading the text. So for example, virtual learning, and this is, and the IEP might be under accommodations that change the way information is presented to students. So in this understood document, you can look up, it says virtual learning alternative, could be audiobooks, right? So that's a good way that we can change that. Text to speech. So instead of them having to type it, they can just say it and it turns it into a document. Microsoft Education Tools, immersive readers, Office Lens, G Suite for Education, immersive reader, Chrome extension. They have it in their Chrome extension. So what I wanted to show you in here is that there is a way that we can, again, going back to that, that first statement about whatever we could do in the classroom environment, we can do online. So just saying, we can find resources in the community. Again, this resource is at the bottom of this presentation. And just these are evidence-based practices also that can be utilized, okay? So before we get started on some of those evidence-based strategies, I wanted to let you know there's resources out there, and I have included some in our presentation. So let's get started with strategies for increasing attention. I'm big about attention because we need attention, in order to learn, right? Because without it, we cannot acquire the information needed to build skills, right? So this is an issue that we have addressed for years in the classroom. For example, we try to get and keep our students' attention. And some of the things that we do in the classroom in the brick and mortar setting include physical proximity, right? We want to get a student's attention, we get close to them, and that usually sets them in, or we bring their desk closer to us and things like that. But how do we do that in the virtual environment, right? So now that we're faced with having to teach online, the challenge is, how do we get their attention? How do we get it and how do we keep it, right? So it's even harder than before. So we have to find ways of adapting the strategies that we already know and use. In other words, our pedagogical underpinnings, right? So but we have to move that into the online environment. So in the case of the brick and mortar or face-to-face teaching, although we're going to be there with our students, it means that we're going to be called to find new strategies, right? So a lot of what we're going to be discussing has to do with the topic of attention, because executive skills of self-control, working memory, and cognitive fluidity need to be addressed, especially now that we are on that distance. So we have a lot to compete with. If you think about it, our students have all kinds of laptops, tablets, and phones that we are competing against. And when you think about what is provided in those types of technologies. What is it? A lot of colors, a lot of sounds, a lot of bling, 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 all those things that are really getting that, those nice neurotransmitters of excited. We get excited ourselves when we play those little games, right? And so they're designed for that. So how do we compete with that? How do we compete with what they have? We can't just stand in front of a camera and say, okay, children, let's do this, let's do that, because we're not there. So we have to find ways to do that. So some of the strategies for increasing attention include limiting our verbal and visual distractions, designating a workspace, breaking tasks into small steps, active learning, brain breaks, in other words, using nonverbal signals for redirection, using visual supports, for example, the checklist or the first, then, start, stop, obtaining attention before giving verbal directions, and providing frequent feedback, providing direct instruction and modeling, using graphic organizing, reinforcing attending behaviors, and allowing access to the special interest area, right? So how does that look? So yeah, great. I know this, Lourdes. What are you telling me? So how do we attain some of these things? Well, first of all, we need to realize that we need to be building those relationships with the parents or the caregivers in the home, whoever is going to be with the student in the home. When we're speaking about the virtual environment, so building that relationship with the parent, we can tell them, okay, here's what I need you to do at home. Can we designate an area? Maybe we need to make that phone call, that visual, that Skype call or that Zoom call, so we can look into the home and see, okay, mom or dad, let's look at that area. How can we use the furniture? What area of the home can we designate for the learning environment? And here's what I need you to do. Can you set this up this way, that way? And maybe we can walk them through. Well, one of the things it's going to do is going to start that relationship with the family. So it's going to start you with the family is going to have your undivided attention for that moment in time. And they're going to see your interest in helping their student, right? Their child. So that's going to start building that relationship between you and them. So when we're back in the classroom, it's already been formed, especially when those families are new to us, when we haven't been teaching their children in previous years. This is our first year with this family. So that's one of the things that it can do. So we can start teaching them, and it's also empowering them to learn the strategies that they're going to need to do throughout the child's life or the student's life, and they can set up in their house. So we are setting them up for success, both in the classroom and in the home setting. We can utilize some of those strategies that we know about, that are evidence-based strategies that we talked about in the past. For example, the calendars, the schedule. Why do teachers have a great time of controlling the classroom environment with their children for a lifetime? I always used to say, how do teachers do it? How do they control 20, 30 children they all come from different backgrounds for an entire day? And what is one of those strategies? Those calendars on the wall. First, from 9 to 9:30, we're doing this, from 9:30 to that. And so those things still work. And we are already doing it in the brick and mortar. Make sure we get those into the virtual environment and also into the home. So teach parents to do that, utilizing the first, then. First, you eat your dinner, then you have ice cream. Remember that? How many of us heard that growing up, right? First, you do your homework, then you go outside to play with your friends, right? It's the same thing. So we teach our students with autism the same thing, and we pass on this information to the family so they can use it. First, you got to do class with Miss Q for so many minutes, and then you get to jump on the trampoline or go in the tablet for 5 minutes, things like that, right? We can utilize the visual supports for him. For example, the traffic light, the green, while we're in green, we're working, while we're in yellow, we're about to be done. And when we are red, we have to stop. That teaches the student the concept of time. Time is an abstract thing to remember, to learn. How do you know the passage of time if you can't see it? So it's a way of teaching them. So there's visual supports that we could use to teach that. Also giving them access to that special interest area item, right? And so at first we give them a lot of access to it. Then we start weaning them out of it for maybe less. So maybe at the beginning we have to do 1 minute. Every 1 minute they get access to it. And maybe we can bring it down to the 2 minutes and then maybe 5 minutes, right? So the idea, but we're still giving them access to it. We can utilize it and we're working for kind of visual support. So this is their area of special interest, dinosaurs. So they get to choose. Always, I want to say, don't give always stickers or candy because we don't always want the same thing. Like we want coffee in the morning, but do we want coffee in the evening? Very few people drink coffee in the evening, right? So we have to give different choices. Sometimes we feel like sweet. Sometimes we feel like salty. Sometimes we feel like walking. Sometimes we feel like playground. Sometimes we feel like computer. So give them choices. They pick the one they want. That way you're getting some buy-in in the activity. And so when they earn their little stickers that go with it, then they're completed. When they complete the 5 items they're supposed to be doing or the 3 items they're supposed to be doing, then they get access to that SIA, right? That special interest area. Breaking down the subject interest area, the special interest area into little squares. And those are puzzle pieces. They become puzzle pieces. And every activity has one puzzle piece. So they're excited because it's still related to the special interest area, but they're also breaking down into more space. So the first activity has maybe the head of the dinosaur. Maybe the second activity has the body of the dinosaur. And maybe the third activity has the tail of the dinosaur. So it just breaks. So they're excited because they're staying focused because it's gaining their attention, the special interest area. And they're also working towards it. And they want to finish it. They want to complete the puzzle. So they're going to be working for them. Mini breaks, very important. Sometimes we want to teach 40 minutes before we give a break. No, it's better to break it down. And again, we can work at increasing their level of tolerance if we just give them that ability. We can give them cards. If they are not able to express their desire for a break verbally, we can give them a card that says, break please, so they can give it to us. And then we can assess and have rules about how frequently that can be used, right? Now we're gonna be here listening to this important Gina Davis from Attention Autism, because again, it's so important that we learn to get our students' attention, whether we are in the classroom, brick and mortar setting, or in the virtual environment. So let's listen to Gina Davis.
Attention skills are so important. They're an integral part of how we get connected with people and the world around us and how we learn. So when they go wrong, things get difficult very quickly, and in autism, they go wrong very frequently. How can it be? But if we go back to basics and ask ourselves, are our activities actually irresistible? Are they worthy of the child's attention? Are they so good they'd want to do them anyway? And again, if we're reflecting back to basics, we should remember that when children are having a good time or when they anticipate having fun, they will join in much more readily and you will get engagement attached to good memories. But autism does make it more complicated. How can it be that a child can lie for 20 minutes looking at the wheels on a train, and yet when you want to show them something, you get only a fleeting moment? We tend to resort to sort of typical styles of intervention. We give the child information, and then we ask a question. The man is riding a bicycle. What is he doing? It doesn't work with autism. They can't see the point, and you need social skills and communication in order to comply. So things get confusing very quickly, not just for the child, but for us as well. How can we find a way forward? I think we could think about the autism learning strengths instead of the things that are going wrong. These children are fantastically visual, and that gives us a way forward. And they have amazing memories. For things they value, for things they find interesting, you will get the most passionate engagement and memories that potentially are planted for life. What a wonderful thing to be so sure that you've given a child something that memorable. But we do need to be thinking about how we are going to create really good quality engagement. I'm not talking about the fleeting look when they ran past it, or the look that is prompted by being somebody telling you sitting, looking, or the which is reward. We want spontaneous engagement. But we should remember attention skills develop. We develop from being highly distractible to being able to do two things at once in a distracting environment. It happens over time. But if we combine this developmental psychology with good autism strategies, we can find an intervention and move forward. And that's really where the Attention Autism Program came from. It is a 4-stage program with incremental steps. First stage, the bucket. Focus your attention. I've got something in my bucket, in my bucket, in my bucket. I've got something in my bucket. I wonder what it is. Ooh. If we can offer a series of quick objects coming out of a bucket, we can teach a child how to focus, and then we can move on to the attention builder. A fabulous activity, great to watch from start to finish, that lasts a little bit longer. And in this way, we can use hundreds of different activities to plant these ideas, rehearse them, and embed them as a skill for the child. We're looking really to get the child focused and attentive for longer periods of time, but with lots and lots of lateral progression, lots of different ways of doing it. And then we add stage 3, where we teach a child how to shift their attention. We use all the language of turn taking, but it's possible for autistic children to learn this skill without ever necessarily understanding the social side of it. So the child watches an activity, takes their turn, shifts their attention to their own participation, and then back to the group. And in stage 4, we add all the previous skills together and put in a transition. So a child will watch a demonstration as one of a group, collect their kit, take it to a group table where they work with the rest of the group together through to completion of whatever it is, though it's the process rather than the end result with these activities, and then they rejoin the group so that we can celebrate what we've done. Shared good times make fantastic memories, and this structure can provide a framework where we can nurture social skills, communication, and thinking skills. We aim for 20 minutes within 6 weeks of the intervention starting.
Okay, so the importance of getting the attention, right? So like I said earlier, yeah, we're competing against all this kind of noises on those games, on the tablets, on the songs. And so are we doing what we're doing? Is it engaging enough? Like she says, am I being so engaging that I am going to compete with whatever my students are listening to in their head or thinking about in their special interest area? How can I compete with that with just a monotone kind of voice? And for that matter, I want to show this girl here because she brings up a great point. This is for VIP Kid. It's for for teachers who want to put in their demo video about to getting employed with VIP Kid. But what I like is what she's saying. She got some great points about what we need to do in order to be engaging in the virtual environment. So let's just listen.
Happy and lots of energy. With your demo, you are online. You are in a flat screen, and you have to produce the energy, the engagement to get your student to focus and want to learn. It is important because I'm not right there by my student. I have to make sure I have energy. High five. Good job. Are you ready? Lots of energy. energy with your body language, with your facial expression, with your voice, and just with your dance moves. Your dance moves. Just kidding, don't dance. But you can, that's cool.
And again, you see that? That's what I like about her. You see how animated she is? Do you see how she, and that would give a student a nice chance, especially if they're returning students, they know you. And so they're going to be like, why is Miss Q doing that? And she's so silly. But even if they don't know you, they're like, who's this lady? What is she doing? Why is she? So she's driving a great point. It's like, listen, this is a flat screen. How do you come out of it? You know, it's just saying there, yes, children, attention to me. No. We gotta be animated. We gotta compete against whatever it's in their head to make them focus. And that's why Gina Davis, the one before, was saying, you know, let's give them an activity that's engaging. So it's like a volcano, some science experiment, something like that. They're like, what's going on there? It's like, get their attention and we prolong it. I mean, that's when we start working. Maybe at the beginning, they can only focus for a minute. And then next time we make, you know, they're going to engage for more. So that's the point of it. Another way of doing it, it's like sounds. Sounds are so important. You know, how do we prepare children for a transition? Maybe we can use a sound that tells them, okay, 5 more minutes. Remember, in 5 minutes, we get to do X, right? We can use that. Listen, if we don't have one, we can use it online. I found that one. Now, I was big in this. I had my own xylophone in classroom. I use that for transitions and for getting their attention all the time. So my students knew that I would use that to transition them. And I purposely would take my time. At the beginning, it was quick because I wanted them to get used to this. So for example, lining up to go inside the room. I couldn't get all 10 of them to go at the same time because I quickly learned that if I did that, they went all over the place, right? So what I did was I lined them up outside the classroom, and each one of them had a spot. I used visuals, circle spots where they would stand on, and on the wall was their name. So we're working on name recognition, and also this is my area, my space where I need to be against the wall. It's excellent because it gives them that awareness of body and space awareness. So instead of being all over the place, they lean against the wall. It gives them that sense of here I am, and this is where I need to be. And it helps them to stay in where they're supposed to be. Those two things, the spot, the circle that I would give them, as well as the name on the wall. Eventually, I got rid of the spots because they already knew where they were supposed to be, right? And then I would take the xylophone and I would say, and I would ringing, and to get their attention, I would go cling, 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 and they get their attention. And then I would take my time and I would say, I'm calling, and I would prolong that. I am calling, and I will make that a little bit so-and-so, ding. And when they heard their name and they heard the ding, they were allowed to go inside, where one of my paraprofessionals was helping them go through the whole process of checking in, putting their bags away, if it was in the morning, it was a checking in routine, finding their name, putting it in the check-in place, and also putting their things away. If it was lunch, going inside, washing their hands, putting away their lunch boxes and so on, and finding their seats. So it was a whole process. It's also working on their inhibition, waiting for their turn. You see what I mean? So the other paraprofessional and I were in the hallway taking care of the students, right? And making sure that they are safe in the hallway. And so I would always call them off order, because I'm also working on that inhibition of waiting their turn. So teaching them how to wait for their turn. And so those are strategies that can be used also in the virtual setting. How can you use me? Look, I found the xylophone in there. So maybe you can do some sort of routine for one of your activities. I don't know what that might be, but you may have to do that for a transition maybe. Now, if you notice, I'm using Google Classroom. This is something that I found on, I didn't know how to use it before this presentation, and I found it. I'm also using a way of getting my students' attention because I'm not a character in a tablet or in a phone game, but by making my classroom be a Google Classroom, I can make it more engaging for the student and they can be curious. The background, I found that online, that was free. The link is at the bottom of where I found it. I wasn't able to manipulate it or make it, it was just, but listen, it was great for this. If you have more time and more creativity, you can make your own. There's plenty of resources where I learned how to do it. They're also included at the bottom of this presentation in your resources section. So be sure to check on that. And look at this one. You can make it even more animated. Make your Bitmoji very animated and get those kids engaged, right? So I don't have the app used for doing that. And I didn't want to get into another social media thing, so I didn't get it, but a lot of people have it. It's Snapchat. We can also use all the stuff that we use in the classroom setting, brick and mortar, all these games. There's a whole bunch of games that we can use. I don't know if you notice also in my presentation, I'm cueing the students to know you, to know that a YouTube video is about to come by setting it up. I'm also playing with where I place myself. You notice that? Sometimes I'm on this side, sometimes I'm sitting, sometimes, look, right now I have this. So it's giving the student another reason to stay tuned, basically, like, where's Miss Lourdes going to be on the next time, or Miss Q, right? Utilizing resources in the internet. This one I love. This is I talked about the abstract nature of time. I love this this particular. This is a I'm going to show real quick. I love this particular app on the phone because I tell you what, the free one only contains 2. The other ones are when you pay. But what I like about it is I asked the student, first, you have to really get their attention. So it's like, come here, press, which one you want? You want the tiger or the lion? And so they pick. So once you get them to pick, that's a buy-in. They're buying into this idea of, okay, what's happening? Over here, you can see the settings. I can change it. I can get the least amount at the beginning. I usually use the least amount, the smallest amount, just to get the student knowledgeable about what's happening, what is going to happen, okay? And so then I ask them, second time I get them engaged, press this button. So they press that button and it goes onto the next side. And then it goes here and I say 1/3 time, okay, press this button, the go button. And quickly, you hear the music. I love the music and I'll tell you why about the music. The child starts seeing that, wait, what's happening? What's behind this thing? And soon they get into the habit of knowing, they get into the awareness that this is a reveal kind of a puzzle, right? So with time, so I set it for 15 seconds at the beginning. So they get, and then at the end, it makes all this nice noise. It makes like, it has the whole reveal. And it makes a very nice sound. The music is going. And what I love about the music is that eventually when they become aware of what's happening, they become aware that there's music and this is what's going to happen. Eventually, I start putting it face down. So they're not seeing the puzzle being revealed. They're just hearing the music. And what happens with that is that over time, they realize that I need to be working as long as music is going. So I can increment it and make it higher. And they don't know that it's still not showing. I'm not going to do that in the first few times. I'm going to do that when I know they're used to working with just the same amount of time and just the music, not watching the puzzle reveal. And then when they get used to that, and I think it's time, they're already, okay, they got this, then I'm going to increment it. So maybe I started out with a minute. So maybe the next time, once I know they're ready, I'll increment it to 2 minutes. Now they're working. They don't know that I've incremented the time. What they know is the music is going, I'm supposed to be working. So that helps us to start increasing the amount of time that they are on a task. They're attending to a task. So this is one way we can progress them. And like I was saying, at the end of it, it starts making, you see it tick? I apologize for that. So did you hear that? It starts counting down, tick, tick, tick. So at the beginning, I make a loud noise, 9, 8, 7, and I get them used to it, ding, 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 ding. So they get all excited about it. So those are little tricks that I've used in the clinic and in this classroom setting. There's other ones that you might be familiar with, which is more aged up. It's also, again, showing that in a more concrete way, the passage of time. So you got to work until, right? So that's another one. The SIA, utilizing the special interest area. So again, that might be, and it might be too distracting. They might be not only interested in looking at that instead of engaging. So you got to decide is that, and then aging it up also for maybe older students also, or maybe a student that's just interested in that thing. Again, notice that I am cueing students that something is happening. Then there's other things. I've also learned how to use things like this, and I've added that link to the end of the presentation, to the resources. And so again, being very animated. Look at the background. Again, I didn't make this. This was free online. If maybe some of you, that's too crowded, that's too busy, and it may be. You have to gauge that for yourself. You can make it. But what I'm trying to drive at this is that we can, just like we decorate our classrooms and we pick a theme for the year, we can decorate our virtual classroom. We can also use the SIAs, special interest area of some of our students. Like, for example, if I had done this myself and I could make it, maybe one of my students has Thomas the Train. I could add Thomas the Train as a special interest area. Maybe another one is Frozen, so I can add another Frozen. So you can incorporate all of your students' special interest area into there. Also, again, going back to Gina Davis's comment about the fact that we need to be able to make our classroom very animated. How do we make it? How do we compete with that? So maybe things like, did you see that? I'll do it again. See how that cat in the hat comes in? Maybe setting this time. I know when my child was growing up, he could be anywhere in the house, and he heard this.
No chance. I can't believe I get to sing this song.
I totally see me using something like that to get their attention. It's reading time. So they get used to that, oh my gosh, so they could be distracted. All of a sudden they hear that, or they hear that song that is that transition song into reading, or whatever that is. And they come in and they say, oh my God, it's reading time. So you get into, that may become the favorite part of the day for them, for the class. And so you can find resources, whether you're, again, in the brick and mortar setting. I'm sorry, I apologize for the audio and there's a delay. We're having a delay, but the point being that
Sit, and we did not like it, not one little bit.
we're reading. You see that? And it's in a virtual setting. The way I used to do it in the classroom was I would have this happening on my board, on my smart board. It would be in the back, and I'll be in the front sitting with a book. So I'm getting them used to, at one point, I'm going to be reading, and we're not going to have that. However, if that's all I do, that's fine. The important thing is that they're listening, they're following, and it's moving it. There's audiobooks. There's an app called Vooks, V as in Victor, OOKS. books, and the books are animated. So that's another app that you can get. Maybe while COVID was happening, they were giving teachers 1 year free. But maybe it's within the budget, maybe within the budget that the school offers, or maybe applying for a grant to be able to get those books for your, those virtual books for your students. Again, it's called V as in Victor, OOKS, so VOOKS. So look for that app. And so this is another way we can age it up. So we can age it up to older students. Again, the same idea back here, you see those are programs in YouTube that are more, this is like a brain break kind of activity that they could be doing, you know. Sorry, it's an ad. Okay, let me skip that so we can see. For older students. So this could be maybe middle, high school students. We can age it up for them and do that, do like a brain break kind of activity. And also the setting. I have aged up the setting just to give you those ideas. Okay, so let's move on to strategies for improving planning. Again, everything that applies to the face-to-face classroom can be adapted to fit the online environment. So these strategies will help strengthen our students' executive function, especially working memory, self-control, and cognitive fluidity. So it's important that we don't give up in using them in our classroom, okay? Whether face-to-face or online, okay? So I am going to be reading off some of these strategies for improving planning that we may already know about, but sometimes we forget to continue using. The checklist, we can have a checklist of things to follow to help with that executive function, the memory, working memory. Making lists of what is needed. For example, what do I need to do my math? Especially, you know, for example, for our students in middle and high school where they're transitioning from one class to the next. So they need to go to the locker. They need to know what are the items that they need for the next class, right? Breaking things into steps, you know, the beginning, the middle, and the end. This is what we do in the beginning. This is what we do in the middle, and this is what we do in the end. So instead of telling them, go ahead and you know, clean your room. We got to tell them okay. This is how you start cleaning the room. This is how this is the middle of it. That goes next, and the next, what happens, right? Creating timelines and deadlines, encouraging them to identify and tackle top priorities first. They're going to need those are independent living skills that they're going to need. Withholding preferred activities until the priorities are completed. First, then kind of situations. Communicating with language that encourages sharing and predicting. Oh, look, so-and-so dropped his pen. What do you think is going to happen? Do you think that he needs help? Things like that, just working them through those activities. Using verbal scaffolding and modeling desirable behavior. Those are some of the strategies for improving planning. And then organizational skills strategies include using consistent routines to ensure predictability, analyzing tasks, especially the multi-step activities, using outlines or teacher slides to help students take notes, using contingency statements, again, first this, then that, segmenting the workloads, and using timed work sessions, using schedules, calendars, to-do lists, etc., and using pictures that model the assignments or tasks and what they're supposed to look like and the end product. Structure and frequent practice or concepts. So for example, when we ask a student, are you ready to go to school? Or clean your desk, clean your room, clean the kitchen. How do they know? You know, so we can provide a checklist. This is what it looks like to be ready. You need to have a headband on, a sweatshirt or a coat that you're going to need, a snack, a bag, the homework, notebook. So but not only do we give them the checklist, we can also give them a picture. This is what your room should look like when it's clean. This is how your desk should look, or your book bag should look like when it's clean, okay? So giving them that concrete picture of what it's supposed to look like. We can use this model of, setting up the stage of task planning. Get ready, do, and done. So under the get ready, we have to think about, okay, so what do I need to get ready? Again, the example that I gave about middle school students. Okay, I have to go to math class now. So what do I need to get ready to go to math class? What items do I need, right? Can I prepare my space if they're sitting in their desk? Okay, what do I need? Oh, we just switched from math to science. What do I need for the science class? Even if I'm on my own desk, not switching classrooms, right? Then I stay in the middle, and then I have to know how much time do I have to work on this activity. I have to know, maybe we as teachers can mark the student, give them a specific time frame that they need to complete the assignment by. We can give them a clear, so maybe a visual timer, right? We can give them a clear indication of what the halfway point is so they can gauge, oh my God, I only have so many minutes left and I'm not even halfway done, kind of thing. And then we can also tell them what it looks like when it's done, or what to do with the object when it's done, right? So maybe put it in the exit bin, on the classroom work bin, right? Finished bin. In terms also of homework, like their take-home folder, for example, we can have one area that has great at work, the to-do tonight. This is what you need to hand in tomorrow. Maybe the papers that the teachers the parents need to sign, and this is what you need to do later. In the online setting, OneNote is wonderful. I use OneNote all the time. Because the OneNote it's like a notebook, and it has different tabs that we can mark, and it could be homework, the graded work, the same thing, but on a digital version of a notebook. It's called OneNote. It's one of those Microsoft products that you can find on those that square on the upper left of your Outlook mail, for example. You see those little dots. Go in there. That's where you have PowerPoint, where you have all your apps that are included with Microsoft. You'll see OneNote, and it's a wonderful digital notebook. Okay. All righty. And before we go, I just wanted to let you know about Cards La Hora del Cafecito, which is a Spanish language weekly Facebook Live show that where we cover tons of topics related to autism, and it's in Spanish. So if you have families that can benefit from this show, ask them to join our private group that is called Grupo Card Español. And once they sign up with us on Facebook, we'll be able to send them alerts when we go live. We go live every Friday at 10 a.m. And the topics range from red flags to the special trusts, anything, summer activities, safety, all kinds of activities. So please share this information with your families. And if you have any questions, you can always reach to us at CARD. And here is a list of your resources. I hope that you're able to maybe take a picture of the screen right now so that you start looking these up online. There's more resources, or reach out to us and we'll be able to get that, a copy of this presentation to you, okay? All righty, thank you so much for being with us today, and I hope you found value in this presentation. Have a great week. Bye-bye.